Hey, 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 people.
Hey,
It's Lynn.
and Brooke.
And we're so excited you're listening in with us for episode 4
Yes,
of Frequency 500, which is pretty fun to say, Brooke.
it really is because we are having fun.
We
I'm allowed to
like,
speak for you on that one.
no, there's a for sure we in that. Feel free always. It is just a blast to talk with you and then to listen back and hear the conversation. It's juicy and it's fun and it's got stuff in it that changes perspectives on a deep level, as well as all this fun and excitement and whew.
Yes, and magic. The two words that come to my mind are magical and simple.
Yeah. Ooh,
Kind of like
those
life,
two
right?
together.
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
Frequency 500, for anybody who's listened for the very first time, we'll just say is a podcast, it's a mission, and it's a movement to help raise the average frequency in the world. It's just that simple. And I'm Lynn Schussler-Williams, and Brooke Haynes is my buddy here, and we're having conversations. And you'll also hear other people's stories as we go through, and you're likely to hear whatever's going on in our lives, right?
Yeah, and speaking of other people's story, we've both had people reach out to us and tell us stories, and I've had a few. I have 2 or 3 people reach out and say, when I was listening to your episode, it reminded me of a time when blah, 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 blah. And they start talking about their story. So I know our word is reaching, and we want to hear those stories. We want to share those stories with the world. So if you're out there and you have this story, submit that story. You can come be a guest, or you can just submit a story and we'll read it out loud for you and talk about it and really amplify all that you do in the world and how your life is unfolding in a magical way.
Yeah. So, last time, Brooke, we talked about amplification briefly, and you practiced it, right? You asked me who I looked up to. We talked about that idea that the people that we look up to and admire are mirrors to our own magnificence, which was the quote from Dr. Gary Simmons, my friend and mentor. And we talked about that. And then you asked me a question. You said, who do you look up to? And I talked about that for a minute. And then you said, well, here's how I see that in you. And that practice is called amplification. And so one of the things that came up for me, of course, a lot came up for me as I was listening to that over and over, like, it felt so good to have that amplified in me, to have the magnificence that I see in others amplified in me. And we had a conversation since last time about how receiving the amplification is not always easy.
Right. It can be rather uncomfortable and also emotional.
Yes. And many of us are not trained to, receive compliments and praise and all of that. We're told to do that politely. We have to say, oh, no, not me, or
reflect
you're
it
too
back.
kind.
Like reflect it back immediately. Like, oh, I love your dress. I love your dress.
Right.
I love your hair, and you didn't even let it land. You didn't even accept that you heard them. You just immediately reflect it and say, I love you. I love you too.
Yeah. So today we want to talk a little bit about receiving and the power of receiving and how it supports Frequency 500, how it supports our mission to raise the average vibration when we do it, and how it might even undermine it if we don't allow ourselves to do it. Right.
Yeah. And I remember the first time we went through that process of amplification and having someone really dial in and hear. I think we were talking about our mission or what we saw. And I mean, it moved me to tears. I was like, wow, they see that in me. these people don't even know me, but just because of the way I showed up to share my story, they could see it in me.
Yeah.
And when I allowed it to land and be inside of me, I was like, I am that. When I thought I was striving for that, but I'm
Right.
already am that. And the way it filled my soul in that moment was, it was priceless. I mean, that alone was all I really needed.
Wow. So that's a huge shift. You know, you went from what you just said is, I showed up to a room full of strangers where we were invited to share a vision and they were to amplify back. The way I showed up and shared my vision allowed these people to see the brilliance in me and amplify it back. And it moved you to tears and it shifted you. Did y'all hear that? It shifted Brooke from I'm striving to be this to I am this. It is in me. People see it in me. Like, that is so huge and so powerful, Brooke. And so the other part of receiving is that when we receive a compliment, when we receive an amplification, when we receive someone seeing something in us, I think what it allows us to do is another of your favorite words, integration, right?
Mm-hmm.
It allows us to carry that with us more out through our day and out through our week and move through the world, having that knowing that it's already in us. Did you feel that?
Yes. And when I wasn't feeling that, I could dive back into that. I could be that again. Like like dialing into the feeling tone, like you've talked about before.
Yeah.
And so when I was not feeling that as I was showing up as that person, I could remember what it felt like to have that feeling when someone amplified me and I saw that I was that. And I stepped back into her again. You know, I always say, because it's very true, my hips shake more, my stride swings broader when I go from like this robotical walk to this going back and forth. This
She's got
beautiful,
her swagger on.
yeah. And so one of the things I do is when I walk is I try to remember who I am when I walk, and I notice immediately my hips start to swing, and I try to walk the block like that to kind of keep it in as much as I can.
Wow. That's so big. You know, those little things, those little shifts, those little rememberings in our mind is something as simple as I know what it feels like when I walk in confidence of who I am, of who I've come here to be.
Yes, because when the more I remember it and the more often I can do it, eventually, you know, I'm that all the time, or most of the time, more and more of the time at least.
Yeah.
And that's who we are. That's coming from the place where we want to be, right? Coming from the future us already.
Yeah. And the part of that that's already in you, that already is you.
Right. That's a great point. We could keep it simple by that way right there. We don't have to worry about if it's the future us or it's just who we are in that moment and the other version of us that exists. Good stuff. And when we feel that, when I tap into that, I feel how much lighter I am, how much straighter my back is, how much I feel connected to my body, and how my problems seem so much smaller. They seem like they're just not even a problem.
Yes. Yes. And you know what you do so well, Brooke? I've seen you do this over and over, and you are an example of this for me that I treasure because you embody this for me. Something will come up that you could create some story around that doesn't feel like a win, right? Something will happen in life. You know, I don't know. As a parent, I can see myself like something happens at a kid's school that's no fun and you got to go deal with it or whatever, right? Or, you know, just something happens that you have the opportunity to respond to. And you either respond one way or you respond from the space of who I've come here to be at my best, or you respond maybe the way society told you to all along before you knew how to respond as your best self, right? Sometimes we respond And you shift so seamlessly. You don't take things as negative. You see the positive before it's ever even been a problem. So therefore it never is a problem. You see the opportunity. You see the way to be with situations in life when they aren't perfect better than almost anybody I know.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think it's that's just who I am, I guess.
Isn't that wonderful?
And also when I'm not, it doesn't feel good. And it doesn't feel good. And I'm not always that way, but when I heard you talking, and I think, where does that come from? I remember a story. Now, this is that I remember a specific moment when my whole perspective about life did change. And it was, I was 19 years old. I had just went through some really hard times. I had got myself wrapped up with a man that was not a good person. I had my face bashed in and with a brick, and I'd recovered from surgery. And then his picture and name was spread over the news because he had shot a cop. Okay. And there were a few people who knew that I had been wrapped up in this individual. And on that news, and then later when it came out that he had AIDS. And this was, when AIDS epidemic wasn't, it had only been around for like 10 years. So we were still very unsure. And this was back when it took 2 years to know if you were really going to have AIDS or not, if you were in a position. So you had to go get tested every 6 months for 2 years. And I remember driving down the road and thinking, I'm not going to have kids. I'm not going to have a marriage. I'm not, right? All these things. Yes. And I remember where I was. I was on a road in Knoxville, Tennessee, driving on a curve. And I said, you know what? If I have AIDS, I'm going to stand up for people with AIDS. If I have AIDS, and I just went down the list of everything I was going to do to live with AIDS and to support others and to be there for others.
Yes.
And to show up for the world to help that, because that was where I was. And I feel like now maybe I already had it in me to be able to twist in that moment, but I feel like it was that moment that I started living my life of the yes mode.
Yes.
How can I take this and let it help me mode?
How can this be a yes?
Yes, right. How can this be what I need to do and show up in the world?
So that was a big moment for a 19-year-old, right?
Who had just been through all this. It was a dark time, very dark
time.
I just tried to, just to lay it all out. It was 2 weeks before then. I had tried to attempt suicide. It was a dark time in my life.
Yes.
So, yeah, there we go.
And there's a shift, man. There is a shift to go from all of that to, well, no, if this is the situation, I'll just find ways to deal with it and show up to the world in a way to come from that place.
Yeah. I don't believe we're here to feel bad. I believe that there's times where we're going to feel bad, but I don't believe that's our sole purpose.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And so since then, I look at my life since then, and I have kind of, jumped into multi-level marketing a couple years later when we were using Awesome before everybody used Awesome, and people would come back around us and be like, I just want to be here because y'all are so hot. You so positive. We were like, awesome, and from there, it was just, it just became a part of who I am.
Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful that it did. And so are our listeners, I'm sure, because we get to benefit.
You get to learn a little bit more about Brooke. I wasn't expecting to share that story today.
Well, that's the way it goes. That's the way this conversation ends up sometimes, y'all. So I just want to say, Brooke, that the power in learning that shift is so important to raising the vibration, right? And receiving, hearing me say, your journey, your story has so much impact for me and for others. And hearing me say, Brooke, that you're one of the people who navigates life in a way that I look up to and admire, and then being willing to receive that, being willing to say, I am the person she's talking about. Right.
Right.
And what happens, I want to go back to that, like, because you just did that really well too. Right. And if people could see your face, they would see that when I said, you have this way of showing up as you and shifting through life's, changes and ups and downs and all of that in a way that I admire and that I think is brilliant, they would have seen the look on your face, which was you taking it in, right? And you being touched by it. And we don't get taught to do that, right?
We don't. And it started with a little bit of shock. Wow, she sees that in me? Like I am that? Like it was a little shock. And then it was like, okay, so I'm doing okay. So even though I do call you and vent sometimes, even though I do call you when things aren't working out at the moment and I'm in the thick of the contrast, even though you do hear the other things too, you still see that in me.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And so that was like, okay. And it made me feel good. It made me feel like, okay, so I'm a winning in this moment right now. And it made me more proud of who I am. And and that right there is just like putting me back on track, right?
Yes, bringing up that vibration. And so I just invite everybody who's listening, the next time somebody says something nice about who you are or how you show up, or someone compliments your work or the brilliance you have in parenting your children or being a good partner or whatever it is in your life, remember this conversation and be willing to take it in, right? And own it and see it as a reflection to you of who you are at your best and who you've come here to be. And we've said before on this podcast, Brooke, that seeing the world through the eyes of love, right? Seeing the world through the eyes of source, divine, whatever you want to call it, right? Seeing the world that way allows us to see that goodness in every situation and every person, all of that. And, but none of us do it perfectly.
No, and it's not all the time. I don't think it's meant to be all the time.
No,
it's not meant to be all the time. And we would use that word integration, right?
Yes.
And so much of this we know in our head, like when we're, especially in the coaching arena, right? We coach this. Why are you trying to tell me I coach this? Right. It's in our head, but we got to pull it down out of our head and be it in our body instead of think our way through it. And sometimes it's hard to know which one I'm even doing. Am I thinking my way through this or am I being my way through this? And I have to check in, right? And check in and say, oh, wow. But what I'm learning more and more about as I live and be this way, instead of I'm going to go journal so I can do this, so this will happen. And in the end, this will, it's all for a reason. Like I'm going to go journal so I can raise my vibration, so I can be better in the world, so I can make more money. That's not working already, right? It's the being of it that works. And so what I'm learning is it comes from a place inside my body and not around my head. And if I stop for a minute and feel like, where am I right now? Often all my particles are flying around right here in my head because I'm thinking so much. So I have to gather my particles. And sometimes my particles, man, they're way out there.
Yeah.
And sometimes I gather them and they slip back out and I have to gather it back in. And I'm pulling in all my particles. I'm putting them into my heart. And I have to start over again to start not over, but just to start again and feel it from my body.
And I think it's important for us to just bring it back around to those feelings are part of how we experience our vibration and our frequency, right? Our vibration and our frequency is about allowing ourselves to feel what we feel, and then looking at how, if I'm in a space of anger, say, how do I get to a place of courage? How do I get to a place of willingness? How do I get to a place, and that's how do I get to a place of love and joy, right? These are the things that are universal to all of us. Masculine, feminine, everything in between, right? This is the human experience of emotion. And emotion is one of the things that moves us up the scale of vibration. And it's an important thing. And this idea of amplification, of being willing to see the good in others, is just a key to getting us there. So I invite everybody, whoever you are, to just take little nuggets from today, and how can you integrate them? Going back to that word, how can you integrate them into your life today and this week and over the next 2 weeks until we're back?
Yes.
And Brooke, we don't promote our businesses here. I feel like it's important for me to say all the women are invited to an online conference that I produce, and Brooke is absolutely integral to. And it's called the Be More Conference for Women. And you can go to it at bemoreconference.com. It's coming up March 11th and 12th of 2023.
And it's a perfect conversation to bring that up in, because that's what we do, right? We have a half day of knowledge, and then a half conference of knowledge, and then we integrate.
Yeah. And part of that integration is an experience of this amplification. Women are going to get together in rooms and learn and practice this amplification with each other. And it is powerful. So I just wanted to, it's super affordable. It's nobody's making $1 million on this. So I don't mind promoting it a little bit and just saying, if this idea of amplification has interested you and you want to come experience it, come join us at bemoreconference.com, and you'll be glad you did.
Well, Lynn, thank you for another powerful episode and
thank
conversation.
You, Brooke. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.